I can go ahead.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. So thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here. My name is Renee Morrison, and I'm the Business Advisory Manager for PowerUp with the YWCA Hamilton Center of Innovation. And we run our programs across the country. So I'm really happy that we have these programs for women and gender diverse individuals. We have a 10-week business planning program called the PowerUp Ready program. And then we have a 4-week program that's called Explore for those exploring entrepreneurship. And then we have BizCents. And I'm going to talk to you today about financial literacy. And really, I hope it ignite something in you so that you're able to take away some things from it. I also really want a discussion going. So you can put things in the chat, but there is the raise the hand feature. And I really like that, those discussions as we go, because I think that money probably, financial literacy probably brings up a lot of different emotions in with people. And so I'm here today to really tell you a little bit about the BizCents. It's called BizCents. It's a free financial literacy program that has 5 different modules. And I'm going to touch a little bit on all those modules. There's exploring our relationships with money. There's e-commerce and digital payments, budgeting and accounting. I think all of us at some point we do budgeting, maybe for the personal side of things. We all have to pay certain bills during the month. So I think that we know something about budgeting. And this is really talking about budgeting for your business. And then I'm going to just touch on credit and credit reporting. There's so many entrepreneurs that I work with, women entrepreneurs, that when I talk about a credit report, they'll say, well, I've never really seen mine and I don't know anything about it. So I'm just going to basically touch on that a little bit. And then I'm going to talk about the startup financing and debt. And so it's just going to be brief about the program. And this is a program that we put on it's called our Uplift Digital Learning, and it's asynchronous. So you can take this program on your own time. It's not a live session. And I'm going to share the QR code at the very end so that if you do want to register for this free program, you're very welcome to get into that. But it's really designed to give women entrepreneurs the confidence that they need in managing their money in terms of their business. So I'll get right into that piece. And I want to do a little bit of a word association before we get into it. And so I want to ask you, when I say the word, and you can put this in the chat, when I say the word money, what comes up for you? So what word would you put in the chat? It could be a word, it could be a sentence. What comes up for you when I mention the word money? So I'm going to look in the chat and see what we've got. If you could, stability. I like that. Cash, survival, helpful tool, security, independence. Nice. That was one of the words I was thinking of too, independence, growing it. Yeah, so those are some things that investment, and I think that's a big thing too, because not every entrepreneur or that looks at their business thinks about investment because we're so busy running our business. I have my own training and development business that I've had for over 20 years. And so I know what it's like to be in business, to have the successes, to have the challenges. And we're so busy running the business sometimes we don't think about investment for ourselves and also the future. Retirement, tax planning, estate planning, all really, really, that's very, very crucial. So yeah, thank you for putting that in the chat. But we all have an association with money. And so that's what I'm going to talk about first is our relationship with money. And the financial literacy piece, it's so important because you have to think about so many things in your business like pricing and profitability and hopefully develop a viable business that is sustainable and that you can live off. And so many entrepreneurs I deal with, they always say to me, when it comes to pricing, I'm going to put my prices really, really low. And that's going to make me feel better to get into the marketplace. And so I always talk about the value and making them see that they have the skills and the skills and the ability to do the business. And sometimes you have to put value on yourself and what it is that you're offering in order for people to buy into your product or service. And I think that's a really big thing. And then, it's always been a challenge for women and gender diverse individuals to have access to capital, to really have that self confidence around the money and the business. There's always time constraints because women are constantly juggling. So we take care of businesses, community, our households, we might have family. So there's quite a number of things that we have to take care of. And I also hear one thing about imposter syndrome that that sometimes leads to the piece about the underpricing. So I'm here to tell you today that, financial literacy courses like BizCents is really good for you to gain that confidence to think about how do you manage money within the business. And I'll get into some other pieces as well that we talk a lot about budgeting as well. And the thing that it really surprises me, I hear a lot from entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in my programs, and they're always saying, I'm looking at, health and wellness. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to eat properly. I'm going to, sleep better. These are all the things that I'm going to do for myself and my body. But we don't usually talk about money in the same way in terms of financial wellness. So I think that is a discussion that really needs to be explored. And we spend money based on our values, right? What is important to us? What are some of our beliefs? And I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs as well that have high debt. And I remember one of my clients came into one of the programs and they said, and they showed me an equity statement. So to know what their net worth is, they had a lot of student debt. So I have a lot of clients that are in that position. And so I said, well, there's no judgment here. And they said, you know what? I'm going to run this business. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to sell my workshops and I'm going to talk to a lot of people and I'm going to buy a house for myself and my 4 children. And she did all those things. Like she set a goal to get out of the debt and was able to do all of those things. So she really looked at that independence and that security and that freedom to do what was best for her situation. And so I think it stems from looking at the goals. Sometimes in my financial classes, I'll say, well, what do you think about finances? And people will say, it's overwhelming, it's very complicated. So I think that once you look at your business, and I'm at this point of doing the financial spreadsheets with another program that I'm teaching, and I'm doing that tomorrow. And so we look at sales forecasting for 2 years. So in the next 2 years, how do we roll out the business? And you don't always have to do everything at once because we have so many hats that we have to wear as an entrepreneur. So I mean, you can do it over 2 years. You don't have to put every stream of revenue or every product or every bit of your service out there all at once. But you can certainly set those goals, and then based upon what you see in those sales forecasts, you can really look at the cash flow. And that's really, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that during the budget part. But so that's really monitoring the money that's coming in and then the money that's going out. And every single month, you will see that in a business, it comes in sometimes peaks and it's a high, then it's a low. We don't always receive that money all at once, but it's good to really identify who your customer segments are so that you know who you're going to target, you know how you're going to reach them, and you know what your pricing is, and to set some of those goals. And I think in finance as well, whether it's personal or with the business, it's also really good to have a safety net. I don't know how many times, maybe in your own situation, you can think of a time where you knew something was coming up, whether it's personal or in the business, and you thought, okay, how do I prepare for that? Do I have to put some money aside? Is it an emergency fund? And it might be like a one-time fee, but it's really good, the preparation around the financial literacy of the business. And I think what's really important is that we all have money scripts, what's called money scripts, and they can be shaped by our direct experience, like what we have done with how we spend our money. Maybe there's family stories, and there's a lot of people that I've talked to that's kind of shaped where they are, what they think about money now. And so that can really shape the way we think about the situation and how we deal with money. And sometimes we say, like, it is important, but it's overwhelming, or we might kind of avoid it and really hope for the best. And so that's not really budgeting. And then there's all the beliefs about, well, that's going to make me really happy if I do this in this moment, or looking at status or whatever it is. So we all might have a money script that we're into now. But based on some of the comments in the chat, I like what you've said about it's really looking at in a positive way and planning for your future, and also thinking about investments, and that that is preparing for your future. Then there's a little bit on in the BizCents program about the e-commerce and digital payments. So I always say to my clients that it's quite important that you look at make it really easy for your clients to pay. And I'm just going through that now with last week I talked about operations in one of my programs. And we talked about all the different, so some clients are using Square, they're using Stripe, some are using PayPal, some are using Wave. And so there's really quite a different way to look at it. But just remember that it's always good to think, how is it going to be easy for my clients to pay? Because at the end of the day, you want to be profitable. Some people have a side hustle that they might have had a hobby and then they want to start an e-commerce business. It could be product or service. So I think it's always good to look at, what platforms do you want to use in order to sell those products or services. A lot of people, they use Shopify when it comes to product. And there's different like inventory control and different things that are really good about Shopify that really help in an e-commerce business. So it always goes back to, if you could think of 3 customer segments that you could identify that you're going to target, who would those be? And so I think that's really quite essential as well to look at that. Whether it's business to consumer or business to business, I think that's quite essential to look at those things but really look at the platforms that you want to be on. And then there's budgeting and accounting, and I think that's really the crucial part, because if you think about it, if I was to ask you how many people here budget, we all have to budget. And so we run our personal budgets. We have payments that might come out monthly, whether it's house, mortgage, rent. Some people have cars, they might lease them, buy them. There's transportation, communications, quite a number of things that we budget for, food, and all the main really necessities. And the same is true in our small businesses. We need to think about all the things that we have to bring into the business. And so the budgeting really helps us. Like that's really the cash flow too, like what money is coming in and what is going out. And then are we meeting all the objectives? Are we looking at KPIs? So those are key performance indicators. And so if you're going to hit your targets, because you probably in a business, when you do a business plan, you look at some of the sales forecasts, you look at what your net profit and income statement will tell you when you're going to be profitable and by how much. And so there's certain things that you can really measure within your business plan, and that's really good for your budgeting as well, to really look at those profit margins. So it allows you to say, you could be spending during a typical month and the money will come in period like in the business, but it might not be the same amount every single month. And then you have to look at all the expenses and something you have to use something to pay for those expenses. So whether it's cash, credit, those expenses will be coming out every single month. So then you can say, well, is there something that I can look at my operational expenses and maybe reduce something because I'm spending too much in a certain area? So it really allows you to keep track at your revenue and and expenses and all of that, and it really helps you to look at those future trends of what's happening in the business and how can I prepare for those to make it more viable. And so when we look at budgets, we're looking at tracking our those expenses. The debt management part is really essential. And to look at the performance of the business, because we can do that ourselves. So I think that's really important. And so that's really important to look at that. The budget of a small business over a certain period of time, preparing for those emergencies. And you may know that in the business, depending on the type of business, you might know what those emergencies might be. And to have that safety net is really important. And looking at those, the money coming in and going out is really that the asset management is really important. And you want to eventually, if you start a business, you want to grow that business. Some people look at scaling up as well. And so what does the scale up look like? And in some cases, that means introducing another stream of revenue, whether it's product or service, or going for a loan or a grant in the business to obtain something. It could be new equipment that you need. So there's a number of things that you may need to look at. And there can be financial goals for the business as well. We talked a little bit about the word association and different things. So if you're looking at the independence or that investing in the future, then it's good to look at some of those objectives. I have a client now that has a spa, and they're located in Hamilton, Ontario, and they've been in business for about 10 years. And they actually want to sell that business and start another business where they guide people in the beauty industry and teach them how to start that type of business. So more of a educational business that they want to start. So they have these goals that they're working towards, and they know exactly when they want to sell the business and when they want to get to the next step. And so it's really important to put some budgeting parameters into the business. And you can have short-term goals, but you can look at goals. A lot of people will obtain things in their business, but they won't. And they'll say, okay, if I open the doors tomorrow, these are the things that I need. But you don't always look like at 6 months down the road, these are the things that I really, really need. So you have to really keep the business afloat. And then you may need certain resources for the business. So it's really important to look, if it's a product-based business, you obviously need to look at materials and inventory. And the service-based business, you might need, I have some clients in the service-based industries, and they're looking at collaborating with other people because they have a lot of work coming into the business and they can't do it. In order to scale up, they need to bring some people in to help them to get to the next stage. And one of the ways that they're doing that is to look at subcontractors, not necessary employees, but people that can help them that have a business of their own. And you really don't, they don't need to be an employee. And so it really helps the business get to the next stage on many different levels. And then there's credit and credit reporting. So I don't know if any of you have actually done looked at your credit report. It's really essential, even if you're not going for any type of a loan or a grant, it's important to look at your report. And so the two main ones are Equifax and TransUnion that have all of your credit history. And there's other ones that are popping up right now that are getting into it, but many of the creditors that are people that you have accounts with will just report to Equifax or TransUnion or both of them. So they're usually going to those two. I just looked at my credit report the other day. So they give you a score that is usually from 300 to 900. Nobody usually gets 900, like the top of that, but they tell you what your score is, and they'll tell you, is this good? Is it not good? Is it really good? So it's important that you look at it, but it also tells you what accounts you have open. Some of my clients have looked on their report and there's been certain mistakes that have happened. They've actually paid some bills, but it wasn't reflected, or it took longer to clear that up. So you can always work with the bureau, the credit bureaus, to, if there are any discrepancies, you can let them know. But it's really good to figure out, okay, these are all the open accounts. Like if you have a cell phone and you have a company that you deal with, that will be on there, as well as if you lease a car or if you have a mortgage. And so they will have a list of everything on that report. So it's really good to check. Checking your own report does not affect your credit rating. But if you, let's say you decided, I really want to go out and get a loan at the bank, and these are the things that I'm looking for, but maybe you didn't do research and then you went to 3 or 4 banks and they're all going to pull your credit report. So that can impact your credit report with them pulling it like that. So I would do, it takes a little bit of research in terms of looking at some of the needs that you may have. So I think that's really important. And the report is something that it's good to understand that report and to see what that score is. And if there is a lower score, you can always work with people. There's credit counselors, there's people that help you to deal with some of that credit. And yeah, typically the scores, they range 300 to 850. I worked really hard over the years to get mine really up, and I know it's tough sometimes with people in their financial situation, but this is a really good thing in terms of looking at that financial literacy. And I think people love credit. Sometimes, I know, think about the last shopping trip you had and you said, okay, these are all the things I'm going to buy, whether it's for your business or for yourself. And I think people forget that the credit is that not actually that you're gonna have to pay that back. So the more accounts that you have open and aren't and have a balance on them, that could impact your rating around the financial piece. But always look at the bottom line when you're going for any kind of financing, and look at, there's different rates. And sometimes the credit unions are really good to work with. We actually have an agreement with Meridian Credit Union, and people that take our PowerUp Ready program and finish with a solid, viable business plan, they're able to apply to Meridian for a loan of up to $1,500, and then we have, there's also a grant for 500 that's associated with that loan. So it doesn't, some people will say, well, that's not really a lot, but it's really good sometimes to look at your, that kind of a loan, like a smaller loan that can get you started and get that, you might not have the credit history, and that's a good way to do it as well. And so it's just like you would for your personal side, for the business. If there is any loans, you want to make sure that you're paying that credit off, and the full balance if you can. And I know it's hard. They give you so many days to make those payments. But I think after, if you miss like 30 days on certain payments, that will be reflected on the credit report. And then there's a little bit about the startup financing, or you might be scaling up and then taking on thinking about taking on that type of debt. So, what are some of the things that you should consider when you're starting a business or scaling up? And I just recently worked with a photographer and they had to get new equipment. So, they were looking at equipment. Some of my clients they have to get a computer or they set up a home office. And so that might be, they have to get a desk, furniture, and some supplies. And then there's always marketing costs when you're starting out. So a lot of things are digital now, but some people do postcards and they do things really inexpensive with Vistaprint. And I think it's good to also to look at working capital. So that's really cash flow. So if you open the doors tomorrow, how much money do you need in the first 6 months in order to run the business? I have another entrepreneur that's actually opening up a beauty business and they're going to have a retail location. So they know that there's going to be more overhead because they have to pay their rent and some of the other costs that go with that. And then they also have to get some employees as well. They're not sure if they'll do employees or rent out part of the space. In that industry, it's done different ways. And then there's always transportation and telecommunications. We have cell phones. We might have websites and things of that nature. So those are some of the costs to look at. And there's another spreadsheet that I use with my clients in some of the programs, and it basically looks at three different sections. And the first section talks about what are all the assets that you have bringing into the business. And the second piece is what are the things that you need. So this is where the needs come in looking at this diagram. And then how do you pay for it? Where is that money coming from? So equity, you might have owner's equity, so money coming from yourself. You might be going for a grant or going for a loan. So that piece is quite important as well to look at all the different needs and things that you require and where it is coming from. So I think in business planning, it always goes back to financial planning in the business plan, completing that plan, the vision. When you complete a business plan, you have all those different strategies. So you will have your marketing plan, the market research, you'll know your customer segments. The financial strategies, that goes back to a little bit of planning and budgeting. So looking at the sales forecasting and some of those other pieces like cash flow, what money is coming in and going out, and then how do you mitigate that? So the bottom number, the cumulative balance on the bottom can never be in the negative. So you have to think, do I have to change my revenues? Like, do I have to have more revenue coming in? Or do I have to change some of those expenses in order to make it so that it's not a negative cash flow? So it's always good to look at when you're looking at any kind of financing is how much money are you looking for? And what is that money for? So have a really clear picture in your business, what you need to use it for. And I think things are really changing around those that are giving out money now that they used to only like the fixed assets. So whether that's a building, the land, the equipment, or like a vehicle that's used for the business. They always only really liked that. And then they thought about to secure these assets towards the loan. but now they're opening that up, the financing now. And so I think the key thing when we're looking at financials for the business is we don't think about enough to get us to that level of whether it's startup or scale up and the viability piece. And so there's all kinds of, I come from a long line of entrepreneurs that were actually in the food industry. My brother had a restaurant in Toronto, and then my father was in the catering industry, and then I'm in the training and development industry. So there's been a lot of entrepreneurship, but there was always something around that financial literacy piece of at some point in order to grow, there was always looking at getting that financing. There's the Canada Small Business Financing Program that looks at that some people apply for. That is a government funded program, but it's administered through the banks. We work with RISE. That's a program in financial literacy and business planning program, and they also do startup loans. And they work with individuals that have identified that there's mental health challenges. And so they have special programs in conjunction with the University of Toronto. But there's so many grants now that I deal with a lot of clients that they get grants, especially in the arts. There's music and there's the film industry, and there seems to be a lot. But you have to keep a watch because sometimes they have it. FedDev is a federal department, and they do a lot of grants and loans as well to not only organizations like PARO and the YWCA Hamilton, but also for some small business. And it could be industry specific. Sometimes they look at the arts. Now they're getting into AI, so they're really incorporating a lot of AI into things. And then the agri-food industry is really big, and they're looking at a lot of money that's flowing into that industry as well. And then whenever you start thinking about that finance piece, it's good to look at the 5 C's. They've changed it a little bit now, but the capital, that's you look into, your personal investment, how much money are you going to put in? And at one point, they always said that an entrepreneur should put in at least 25% of the amount that you are asking for. So I think it's important that you look at the equity that you're going to put in order to apply for that financing. And then there is the credit piece and like how many accounts that you might have open now. And the collateral, they like to have those different assets that are secured against the loan. And the capacity, so they really look at your capacity to pay and how much you have done now, the history of your credit. And I think whenever you go for any type of financing, they do look at character. So I think you can be very confident once you have a completed business plan that you've obviously, there's so many skills that you get from putting a business plan together. And part of that is, you've got financial planning, you've got, and that's a huge piece that might seem overwhelming, but once you have that, you can continuously use that. And I think the market research is a huge skill because you're always going to be looking at the market and the industry to see what's happening, any of the trends and what people are buying. So to have that kind of a skill, I think says a lot. And they'll probably be looking at your vision and the passion, of course, to do this type of business. So I think those things are really, really, really key. And I'm going to, this is a QR code that you can scan. This code will get you, it's a link to register for the BizCents program. Like I mentioned, it is asynchronous, so you can take it on your own. It's not live, a live class. But I really want to impart with you today that women entrepreneurs and gender individuals, you're not just running businesses. I mean, you're running families and communities, and there's just so many things that we do. And I think it's important for women entrepreneurs really to understand those numbers. And once you understand those numbers, and the value, because I ask a lot of entrepreneurs, I'll say, what is your markup? And they'll say, I don't really know what that is. So whenever you price out your pricing strategy, you might have packages, subscriptions, it might be a project base. But hopefully you've looked at your pricing and there's a markup in there so that you are able to make some money on the product or service, and that there's some value that is incorporated into it, because I think that is really quite essential. So I'm going to take, at this point, I've really completed my presentation on financial literacy, and just want to know if any of you have any questions that you may have. Pam, yes.
Hi, thank you for that. Can I ask you something that might be a bit about like personal debt question?
You can certainly, you can ask me. I'm not just so you know, I'm not an accountant, a lawyer, or a credit counselor, but if you have a question, I will do my best to answer that.
Sure. If you do some kind of debt consolidation or credit counseling, does that affect you renewing your mortgage? Or is that like just a question out of your realm?
That is not really my expertise, but I know that a lot of people, like I just know from the context that I have, some
Yeah.
people have done a debt consolidation and they've worked with their financial institution, and
Okay.
they've had all those discussions with them to see how it will impact their credit rating, their history,
Hmm.
their mortgage renewal. So I think it's important to have those discussions with those people that are in those roles. It's a very good question, though.
But do you mean like a bank? Like talk to someone at the bank?
Like, who do you have? Like, you don't have to give me the name, but do you probably have your mortgage with a financial institution? Is that correct?
But like a B lender, like
Oh, okay.
Equitable Bank.
So I would talk to them and do some research.
Okay.
There are credit counseling organizations out there that you can reach out to as well,
Okay. Thank
to get some information. And I think that's important as well, that that won't impact getting that information and doing that research is a
Okay.
good thing, right? That won't impact anything to get that level of knowledge. So I think that's important.
Thank you. And my other question is in terms of grants, is there like a tool or a website that you'd recommend to kind of see what grants are out there for
I
business?
I follow, like for our organization, they have them on. I can actually I'd love to send a follow-up email, and I have a list of all the links to all kinds of grants and loans. So I can send that out, and Lori could always, I'll send it to her. She could always send it out to the people that attended, and then you'll have that. So hopefully that would help. Yeah, I'd love to do that, because you know what? It's something that changes a lot. The landscape of grants and financing really changes a lot. There's so many different things, and it depends what kind of business that you're in. And I also deal with regional innovation centers. They deal a lot with mainly with tech related businesses, but there are other ones that do have that. So I think that's important. But yeah, I'll send a follow-up email that really outlines all of them. And like I said, they change a lot. Somebody asked me about financing for their website the other day, and we used to have the Canada Digital Adoption Program. Some of my clients received that. And that was great. They got about $2,500 to, but they were given somebody that did their website and they were able to get that up and running. And now that program is stopped right now. But so they keep propping up, and then there's a good one, innovation. And yes, so ISED has there's different departments within the government, and they list some of the grants as well. But I'll send you as many links as I can, and hopefully that gives you some information.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Or it doesn't even have to be like it could be a comment as well. I think that financial literacy does stir up a lot of different thoughts. But it's so essential, like it's so important that we know like what's out there, I think it goes back to what are some of the needs that we might have as entrepreneurs and running a business, and even on the personal side that we want to get those things in order as well. So I think that's so essential. I really am happy that you came today, and I'm thrilled that you learned something, and maybe it was something new, and I hope it really helps. The BizCents program is, like I said, a really good program. So feel free to sign up for that. And yeah, I'll send that follow-up email to Pero. I really thank Pero for having me today. And yes, thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Rini.
You're welcome.
I wrote down, just in case you didn't have a chance, the two individuals that would like the email sent about the grant finders. So if you need me, I can send that through to you.
Yes, please. That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, though. This is something that I think is so crucial, the financial lit. So I love teaching people about that because it's so crucial, right?
It is, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for
Okay.
attending. This was really great. A lot of information, a lot of valuable information. So thank you for attending, and thanks again, Rini, for putting on this webinar.
You're so welcome. Thanks.
Okay, everybody take care.
Bye, everyone.